Great to connect as always. We've connected with Mark Zeigler so many times over the years. He covers the San Diego State men's basketball beat for the San Diego Union-Tribune, and he's back with us right now on John and Jim. We're getting closer, Mark, as you know, to the season. Now the schedule is officially out, both the non-conference and the conference. What's just your overall reaction? We see Grand Canyon in the league. I think metrically that can be beneficial. We see the non-conference slate with the Vegas games in Arizona. What do you make of the schedule overall?
It's about what I expected, and Brian Dutch has said it numerous times. He kind of sets his schedule based on what his expectations for the team are. If he's not going to take a team that he doesn't think has a chance to be really good into some, really tough games, particularly early, if he thinks they're really good, he's going to test them, and he's going to test these guys. And obviously, we knew they were going to be in the Players Only Festival, Players Era Festival. Sorry. And the Arizona game was something that they wanted to add, a little more strength schedule. I think they were looking at another game, and then as soon as Grand Canyon came into the league and they realized they most likely would be playing at Grand Canyon, and now they are, that became another really tough game, and they felt like they had enough strength in the schedule. But even some of the non-conference home games, which are just bye games, a couple of those teams like Lamar and Troy are going to be picked first or second in their league. So they're not going to be pushovers. They're going to be tough games, good teams, talented teams. So I think it's a good overall mix of easier games and harder games. And they'll have a chance to get themselves secured in the NCAA tournament, probably by the end of November if they do well in Vegas.
Just how good do you think this team can be, if healthy?
Well, it was interesting today at practice, before practice started, when they gather around, there's usually a message before practice and then at the end of practice. And Brian Dutch was talking to him. He goes, look, I have high expectations for you guys, and other people really do. And our job is to live up to those expectations. And you just don't do that in games. You do that in September, on September 11th. I mean, you do it months before the season, every single day. You just got to grind. And they really had like a grinding practice today. I mean, it was pretty good, I thought, but I think that's kind of the message that, look, this team can do some really big things. And it's hard to say, in other sports and team sports, particularly in the NBA and baseball, where you got a best of 7 series, you kind of say, okay, our expectation is to get to the World Series or get to the NBA finals or the conference finals. But college basketball, it's a little bit harder to set a goal because of the one and done nature of the tournament. You just try to get to the tournament and then see what happens. But and I kind of think that's the way they're approaching it. But I really feel like this team is expecting, at least, obviously, at least to be in the tournament, but to make a little bit of a run, minimum second weekend type thing in the tournament. And I think that's valid. I mean, they have everything you could imagine you would need: size, experience, speed, athleticism. All that is there. It's just a question of, can they put it together on the floor?
Mark Zeigler is with us right now from the UT. It's funny you say that. It's not to compare this team in the preseason to the final chapter of the 2023 team that ended up playing for a national championship. But from a roster perspective, how would you compare like the depth? Because it feels like the calling card right now with this team is they have a chance to be very deep. And one of the stories of that team that ended up in a Final Four was, they had the 9 starters, essentially, obviously 4 coming off the bench. But do you feel like there are some similarities just with the roster makeup of the two teams?
Yeah, this one's a little bit more balanced in terms of, it's got a little bit of everything. That team just had a lot of bulk and size. And when they figured it out after losing to Arizona in Maui, and kind of said, let's go with a double post, double low post. You don't see that very much in college, but we have the guys to do it. And not only will we just go double low post, but we're going to bring guys off the bench at those positions, and we're just going to grind you down. And they were a 6th-year senior, 5th-year senior, 5th-year senior, 4th-year senior. And so it was more experienced, and it was thicker, I would say, than this team. Obviously, there was Jaden Ledee on that team, and Rooker Rope. Guys like that who are just wide bodies. They don't have those on this team, but but in terms of just the overall depth, I think it goes even deeper, because it goes past 9 on this team. It goes to 10, it goes to 11, it goes to 12, and so, Brian Dutcher said the other day, and you were there in his press conference, he goes, I almost have too much depth. I don't like having this much depth because somebody's not going to get to play as much as they deserve. And I think he's already sort of setting the team up for that. He's going to have to make some really hard decisions, unless they're made for him, either by how people are playing or by injuries. But that's the difference in this team, is that it just goes so deep and just keeps going. And how are you going to sort that out? Because you really can't play 12 guys in a 40-minute game.
How has Magoon looked? And leading off that, what's your expectation for Magoon this year?
So he's looking a lot better. I think he's ahead of his rehab. I kind of always expected him like middle of October. So we're probably a good month away, maybe 5 weeks away from him getting on the court, unless he really, really progresses in terms of like live action. He's most of the time he's out there shooting around, but he's pretty mobile right now. I mean, he can run, move and shoot. He's just not stationary shooting. I think he can do some running in certain environments. But I just watch how much teaching's going on in every practice, how much timing's getting, tweaked and calibrated. And he's just not going to have that. And it's going to be hard for a young player to step in with all these expectations. I mean, Brian Dutcher said the other day, he goes, look, we think he's a pro. We think he's an NBA player. And, he may very well might be, but I just think people have to be able to have, just like last season, have a little bit of patience with him. I don't think he's going to step on the floor and start having double doubles with 6 blocks. I think you're going to see it in bits and spurts, but I think it'll come around quicker than it did last year, because he knows it's in there and he has that confidence. But just the game timing is going to take a little while. But, again, going back to the depth, I mean, you watch and you got a guy like Jeremiah Odom, who likely will back him up, who's a 6th-year senior, who's long, athletic, and shoot. I mean, I don't know how much they'll miss a little bit of the shot blocking without him in there, the rim protection. But other than that, I mean, I don't think you're going to miss too much when you have Jeremiah Odom in there. And if Magoon's not ready or can't play heavy minutes yet, or his timing's not there, I think this guy is pretty darn good and is going to be a pretty, a good piece for them to have.
When you look at the league, and this stuff changes so often, where a team could be picked in the preseason 9th and they could finish 2nd, or maybe vice versa from 2nd to 9th or whatever. When you look at the league, though, as good as it's been quality-wise, getting teams to the NCAA tournament, then you add in the Grand Canyon, and Grand Canyon's had this recent success, obviously, getting to the tournament in the 2020s. What are your expectations for the league here in 2025-26?
Well, I think the league is down unless they really hit on a lot of the pieces they brought in. But I just think the power conference schools have more money. The money is just starting to really separate things. Every year, I think you see it a little bit more. It doesn't mean they don't make mistakes or they overlook a guy who is in a mid-major program and emerges. But I just think there could be fewer and fewer of those instances, if that makes sense. I look at a team like Nevada. It's going to be hard to replace what they lost. Boise State, is another one. New Mexico lost everybody. I mean, they still could be really good. Eric Olin's a really good coach. He's going to have a different approach and philosophy. But I just think in terms of like the proven commodities in this league, obviously San Diego State, and it's going to be I think Grand Canyon's the second best team in this league. And then Utah State's going to be pretty good, I think, again, although they lost some pieces. But I don't know that it's going to be a 4 or 5, 6 bid league. I think it's going to be more closer to 3. But that's still pretty good. I mean, you don't have too many mid-major leagues like that. But the thing, the nature of the beast in the Mountain West is that the travel is so difficult, particularly for the C-level teams, that's the great equalizer. And so you can have a team like Nevada that is maybe down a little bit, but you got to go up to Nevada and play. And it's a tough crowd and a tough environment, and the altitude, the travel, and it's cold, all those things. And it makes games a lot closer than maybe they should be on paper.
How big of an impact do you see Reese Waters have in returning this year from injury?
Well, I keep saying it, and even like the last few practices I've been to, I find myself forgetting about him. I think he's the forgotten man in this whole equation. Look, he was their best player last year going into the season. He was their only all-conference player. He had, the season before, the first half of 2 seasons ago, he was, 23, 24. He was probably our best player. I mean, Jaden Ledee was really, really good, but man, Reese had some big games. I keep going back to the Gonzaga game at Gonzaga where he was the best player on the floor by a mile. Nobody could stop him. He just looks so good. And then he rolls his ankle and he kind of gets behind. He comes back too soon and pushes himself. And then he gets in his head, and in his back half season isn't that good. And then doesn't play at all last year. And people forget about him, but man, he looks good in practice. I don't think he's missed a shot since I've been there since July. I mean, he makes everything. And, his defense was good, and he brings size, he brings experience. And, if he keeps it together and he stays healthy, he could have a huge season. I mean, he's such a talented player, and everyone's forgotten about him. They're just talking about Miles Bird. They're talking about Magoon. They're talking about Farrell. They're talking about the transfers they brought in, Taj, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But don't sleep on this guy.
That is so well said. Mark Zeigler with us from the UT. Mark, just a couple of more. I wanted to ask you just locally about the impact of UC San Diego to the WCC. And now you got, obviously, USD. You have UCSD. Why the move, and what does it mean for like the local Division I college basketball scene?
Well, I think the move is a couple things. I mean, I think their success in basketball last year got them thinking like, well, wow, that was easy. Our first year of Division I, and we went to the tournament and almost beat Michigan. Well, yeah, we could play at even higher level. And I think that got them thinking. I know the WCC had been kind of chasing them for a while. They'd kind of been resisting, and that, I think, kind of pushed them over the top. Like, well, let's get into a better league, and let's, maybe a little more TV revenue, some more exposure, and Gonzaga will be gone, and, And then I also think the other half of that equation is what's going on with the Big West. The bottom of the Big West is just a mess. It's, you're playing basically in high school gyms with laminated wooden bleachers you pull out from the wall, and not a lot of resources. And I think they just felt like they outgrew it really quickly. Now, that said, be careful what you wish for, because the WCC without Gonzaga still is a pretty good conference, and there are several programs in there, USF, St. Mary's, Santa Clara, that have the kind of resources that UCSD does not have. I mean, they charter everywhere. USF has houses just across the street from campus for their coaches because it's so expensive to live up there. They have buy budgets. Some have practice facilities. I mean, so these are the type of things that, that's the next level. And yes, they competed last year at that level, but that was kind of an aberration. They had a really good coach who they've lost, and he also kind of had a cheat code there where he figured out getting Division II guys who played a lot of minutes, taken a lot of big shots, been in a lot of big games, even if it's at a lower level, really translates to the Division I level. Everyone else kind of ignored it. Now everyone's onto that, and the big boys are offering those guys NIL, so they can't get those same kind of players. And so I don't know that they're going to have that same kind of success. So I don't think it's going to be as easy as they think it is. But this move was just, it basically was for that reason, that they felt like they outgrew the Big West, and they wanted to get off that train and get on the next one.
And then finally, Mark, we're up against it, but St. Mary's and the WCC, all this movement that's taking place, mid-major basketball, what is this going to mean for St. Mary's? Is the Pac-12 still possible, or what do you think happens with the Gales?
I don't know. I know there's been talk, but here's the problem with St. Mary's. Is it a program or is it a coach?
Right.
And that's the eternal question. I think it's probably more the latter. It's Randy Bennett. What happens when Randy Bennett leaves? They don't have great resources. They don't have a great arena. They play in a pavilion. It's not a huge budget athletically. It's not a huge school. They don't have a lot of resources from donors and NIL and that type of thing. And I just think that once Randy Bennett's gone, it's going to be run. I think a lot of people think they're just going to be a run of the mill lower level WCC team, kind of like a USD is. And so I think that's been the resistance for like the Pac-12 grabbing them. Yeah, they're sexy right now, but 10 years down the road, where are they going to be? And so I think they'll probably stay in the WCC. But then again, whoever thought that UCSD would be in the WCC? So anything is possible.
Anything is possible. We know that in the world of college realignment. Mark, appreciate you taking time for us. We're looking forward to your coverage in the UT during this upcoming season. And thanks for taking time. All right.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right. Great stuff from Mark Zeigler.